welcome to my channel. The month of July is coming to an end and it's time for the monthly blooms video. In this episode, we'll take a look at what's blooming in the gray turtle garden right now. And you will see African violets of all sizes, including standards, miniatures, and semi-miniatures, as well as a couple of other Gesneriad plants, all in one video. Let's start. Here far back is the largest plant blooming in my home right now. It's a standard variety by Reinhardt. It's a vintage from 1971 and it's called Happy Harold. This is one of the largest variegated varieties growing in my collection. It's an easy grower, and if you just start growing variegated African violets, I would highly recommend starting with Happy Harold in particular because it's a very easy grower and it blooms frequently. The variegation on the leaves is very beautiful. The contrast between the white variegation color and the very bright medium green main color on the leaves, as well as the blooms that are very vivid, deep red, purple, or wine red color as they are described in the official description. I highly recommend Happy Harold. In front of it is a Ukrainian semi-miniature hybrid called Scales, finishing blooming, and it's a hybrid by Elena Libetskaya. It has platinum pink crown variegation and heavenly blue semi-double and double blooms, and this is the last bloom of the season. In front of it is also a semi-miniature variety. This one is an American hybrid by Belinda Thibodeau called Cajun's Little Oolala, and the name is very cute. I love the leaves variegation on this particular variety, and the blooms are very cute. They are pink with some purple fantasy around the petals and some darker eye in the center of the bloom. And we can see that the plant is struggling a little bit with the hot growing temperature, as this place here doesn't have the central AC system. So you see the older leaves have the regular size and good variegation pattern, and the newer leaves are growing a little smaller, and also the bloom stalks are very short. Normally they're taller on this variety. So I had to actually get the blooms out from under the foliage to show them to you today. Here we have a standard variety by Kent Stork called Ace of Spades, finishing its blooming cycle, and it had many more blooms, and I included it today just to show you the beautiful contrast between the dark green serrated foliage and the white blooms with some purple eye. Behind it is a Russian hybrid by a hybridizer living in Moscow, Evgeny Arkhipov. It's called AE It's Raining. It's an easy growing standard variety, and I also highly recommend it because it's been a happy camper for me. And I like the blooms on this variety because they have lavender main color with some blue purple fantasy that does look like it's raining, so the name speaks for itself. AE It's Raining, and it also has some white band around the petals. Here is not an African violet, but its close relative. It's a Streptocarpus, and this variety is called Bristol's Nightfall. I showed it previously in some of my monthly blooms videos. It's produced by the African violet hybridizer and a Streptocarpus hybridizer, Ralph Robinson, who's famous for his Rob's African violet hybrids and Bristol's Streptocarpus hybrids. And this one is called Bristol's Nightfall. It has dark blue color, blooms with some yellow throat and some black lines inside of the throat. Here in front is a standard by Paul Serrano and Linden Line greenhouses called Raspberry Rain. I love the variegated leaves on this particular hybrid, and the blooms are pink with some blue and maroon fantasy, and because it's so hot right now in July, they are blooming much darker. And overall, this particular plant that I have, I think it's sport. It might be a sport of the main hybrid because it always blooms darker. In front is a semi-miniature by Sydney Serrano called Sassy Sister, and this is just a baby of this variety that I saw blooming in the greenhouse, and I just got it out to show it to you because it's such a good bloomer, and it starts blooming at a very early age. It's a double pink pansy with green ruffled edge, and the green edge usually gets more pronounced in cooler growing temperatures. Next to it we have another semi-miniature by the same hybridizer, Sydney Serrano, called Snuggles Little Girl. I got this plant earlier this year from Woodland Blooms, and it's a variegated girl-leaf variety with some double pink blooms. And here is a blooming premiere of the season. This is a girl-leaf chimera called Milk's 10 Cats by Olive Ma Robinson and S. Fu. I purchased this plant from Violet Barn last year, and it took me a while to grow it, and I was very surprised to see it beginning to bloom in the warmest growing temperature right now in July. So this is a huge event for me in my little African violet garden. I wanted to share it with you today. Milk's 10 Cats. Behind it is a standard variety that in my growing conditions grows more like a semi-miniature. It's called Pastel Princess by Lampier and Linden Line greenhouses. It has plain green girl foliage and single blue stick-tied pansies. It's very cute. Pastel Princess. Here behind it is a no ID violet that I love no less than the named hybrids in my collection. I picked it up last year from Lowe's. Sometimes they have beautiful varieties, and I have no idea what the name of this particular hybrid is, and I just love it for the beautiful color and the pattern on the blooms. And it's an easy grower as well. Next to it is my favorite Boomin by Sydney Serrano. It's a semi-miniature with glossy dark green leaves and feathery white blue double blooms, and it blooms very frequently. I highly recommend this hybrid as well. In front of it is a standard variety blooming called Ness Candy Pink by Ness. It blooms with semi-double hot pink ruffled stars that truly look like candy. It's very pretty with variegated foliage. Here in front is the first bloom on Max Virtually Velvet. I think it's a standard, but in my growing conditions, it grows more like a semi-miniature. And here we have some variegated foliage from the winter, the older leaves. And the younger leaves look almost all green, very little variegation on the edges. And I attribute it to the warmer growing temperatures. The blooms are very velvety, dark, I would say fuchsia wine. I don't even know what kind of color it is, but it's very, very vivid, very bright. I think in the official description, they are described as coral red with blue overlay. Very interesting color. Behind it is Emerald Belle. This is the largest amount of blooms I've ever seen on it, and this is the first blooming cycle going on since the last monthly blooms video. It's called Emerald Belle by Olga Barasheva. It blooms with petite green bell-shaped flowers, and I think it's a semi-miniature. And I also believe that it's a sport that was produced from Max Elegant Emerald. Behind it is finishing its blooming cycle a standard variety by Janet Stromborg called Allegro Aspen Glow, and it has pink star blooms with some blue fantasy. Next to it is another relative of African violets called Kohleria, and the name of this Kohleria variety is Ingrid. I don't know who hybridizer is. I got this plant from my local African Violet Club and Thousand Oaks African Violet Society when I just started growing my collection in 2019. This is a very beautiful Kohleria with very bright, vivid orange colored blooms with some yellow leopard print pattern inside. And it blooms not frequently, but it's a good bloomer, I would say. So if you're curious about growing other Gesneriad plants, I would definitely recommend this one. Here we have a miniature variety by Ralph Robinson called Rob's Chili Willie. It blooms with double silver white stars with medium blue overlay and edge. And right now I even see some pink in the center, which is very interesting. I think it's because it's warm now in July. And then finally here we have Cajun's Fascinating Fury by Belinda Thibodeau. It's a variegated standard variety. Gorgeous blooms, very deep purple, double blooms, and look at this, it's finally showing its fantasy. And I'm so excited about it. And please excuse the cat hair. You saw the cat in the previous video, so now you know where it's coming from the prima donna of the house. Pink and white fantasy on semi-double and double blue frilled stars. And here are all of them, my African violets and other Gesneriad plants that are blooming right now. We are in the month of July, and today is July 26th, 2021.